Welcome to today's deep dive. I am so glad you're joining us for this one, because today we are taking a crowbar to the hood of the AI industry.
Yeah, we're looking past all those flashy consumer product announcements.
Exactly. We want to expose the hidden engine that is actually running this entire ecosystem. And our guide for this today is Aaron Ross's Tech Reader AI Digest, specifically the edition from Thursday, May 7th, 2026.
Right, and the overarching mission for this deep dive is really to understand the two massive forces that are dictating the future of tech right now.
Yeah, which is, on one hand, the really messy human governance fighting it out in the courtroom, and on the other hand, just the staggering, trillion-dollar financial leaps that are keeping the servers humming. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Well, to truly understand the current state of AI, we really have to look at both the legal battles and the balance sheets. They are two sides of the same coin at this point.
Right.
You can't separate the engineering from the courtroom or the cloud commitments anymore.
No, you really can't. And that actually brings us right to our first story from the digest, which drops us right into the end of the second week of the trial between Elon Musk and OpenAI.
Yeah, and we should be really clear up front here.
Oh, absolutely. Before we even get into the details, you and I are not taking sides here. We are not here to argue whether Elon Musk or Sam Altman is, in the right or anything like that.
Right. Our job is strictly to look at the documented testimony that was presented under oath by the witnesses.
Because that testimony, it's giving us a real-time look into how the most important AI company in the world actually operates behind closed doors.
Yeah, and the digest highlights testimony from 3 independent witnesses against Sam Altman's leadership. And together, they paint this picture of an organization undergoing just a radical internal shift.
Right. So hit 1 was a safety concern. This came from Rosie Campbell, right?
Yeah, Rosie Campbell. She's a former safety researcher who joined OpenAI back in 2021. And at that time, the primary directive was really long-term safety research.
Meaning ensuring that artificial general intelligence, or AGI, would remain aligned with human values.
Exactly. But she testified that by early 2024, the AGI readiness team and the super alignment team were just completely disbanded.
Wait, what does an AGI readiness team actually do on a day-to-day basis that makes disbanding it such a huge piece of evidence?
So an AGI readiness team is essentially a group of specialized engineers whose entire job is to actively try to break the models.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, they run these complex simulations to test if the AI can, say, autonomously deceive users or replicate its own code or even access secure external servers without permission.
That sounds incredibly important.
It is. But Campbell testified that the internal culture shifted fundamentally away from that kind of rigorous, cautious research. It pivoted almost entirely toward just rapid product deployment.
Like just getting things out the door.
Right. She stated under oath that she felt she no longer had a place in the company once the focus became shipping consumer products instead of, answering those foundational safety questions.
Which leads right into hit number 2, the governance crisis. This was detailed by Tasha McCauley, a former OpenAI board member.
Yeah, and her time on the stand was really explosive. She testified about what she described as a culture of deceit under Altman.
Causing, internal crisis events every few months, right?
Exactly. But the absolute focal point of her testimony was this thing being called the Sutskever dossier.
Right, from Ilya Sutsky, but he's one of OpenAI's co-founders, one of the lead architects of their original models.
Yeah. And according to Macaulay, Sutskever had actually compiled a document spanning dozens of pages.
Dozens of pages.
Dozens, detailing alleged chaotic management events and very specific instances where Altman had misled the board. And Macaulay testified that she received this dossier via email.
That's a huge paper trail.
It is. She also revealed that the board of directors was kept completely in the dark regarding the public launch of ChatGPT.
Wait, really? Just imagine that. You're serving on the board of directors for the organization that releases literally the fastest growing consumer application in human history, and you find out about it on the news like everyone else.
It's wild. And the legal implications of that exact disconnect were laid out by the third witness, David Scheiser.
Right. The legal echo. Scheiser is a nonprofit law expert and a former Columbia Law School dean.
Yeah, and Scheiser connected that internal dysfunction directly to external corporate partnership.
Microsoft, specifically.
Right. He testified that Microsoft was granted access to test a version of GPU-4 without going through OpenAI's formalized internal safety review process.
Just bypassing it entirely.
Yeah, and he pointed out that this perfectly echoes the internal warnings from the Scott memo way back in March 2018.
So this is a documented pattern.
Exactly. Exactly. And the legal argument here relies on structural governance. OpenAI is overseen by a 501c3 nonprofit board. Their legal mandate by law is to humanity, not to shareholders. So Scheiser argued that if a CEO is withholding vital operational information from that board or bypassing their safety protocols with a corporate partner, that board is structurally paralyzed. They literally cannot fulfill their legal fiduciary duty.
Okay, what's fascinating here is, wait, I'm stealing your line.
Go ahead, run with it.
What's fascinating here is Aaron Rose's key takeaway. This trial is actively rewriting the history of November 2023.
Yes, absolutely.
Because what the public just dismissed as a sudden, messy palace coup was actually the result of a board that had compiled a highly documented long-term case against the CEO. It's like investigating a plane crash, right?
That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, we all saw the explosion in November 2023. But this trial is like finally opening up the black box and realizing, oh, the alarms were blaring in the cockpit for months.
Exactly.
But I do have to push back a little on the mechanics of how this played out.
Okay, sure.
Because if the board had all this evidence, right, this massive dossier, this documented track record of being kept in the dark, why did their messaging to the public fail so spectacularly at the time?
Right, it looked incredibly uncoordinated.
It did. Why didn't they just say what they knew?
Well, the optics failed because of a structural contradiction built right into OpenAI itself. They operate as a capped profit entity, but they are governed by a nonprofit board.
Right, the capped profit model.
Yeah, where investors can earn a return up to a specific multiple. But the ultimate authority, the literal kill switch, is held by a nonprofit board that structurally does not care about revenue.
It's like trying to govern a high-speed freight train by attaching a set of bicycle brakes to the engine.
That is exactly what it is. You have this corporate entity fueled by billions of dollars, moving at the hyper-competitive speed of Silicon Valley, and the only tool the board has to control it is a total abrupt shutdown.
Which is why it looks so chaotic.
Exactly. That structural friction is why November 2023 was such a mess publicly. When the board took action, they communicated like a cautious nonprofit. They just cited a vague lack of candor.
Right. But the market, the employees, Microsoft, they all reacted like a trillion-dollar tech conglomerate protecting an asset.
Because they were. The board didn't lack evidence, but they completely lacked the ability to translate their nonprofit mandate into a language the financial markets would actually tolerate.
Wow. Okay, so we've just seen the fragility of the human governance meant to control AI. But what happens when you pair that fragile governance with just unimaginable amounts of money?
The stakes get significantly higher.
Exactly. Which brings us to our second story. Anthropic, the creators of the Claude AI models, and their mind-bending financial commitment to Google.
Yeah, Anthropic is committing to spend $200 billion on Google Cloud over 5 years, starting in 2027.
$200 billion over 5 years. Just to give you a sense of scale, we have to look at Anthropic's current massive compute stack.
It's unbelievable.
It is. They already have over $100 billion committed to Amazon. They have $30 billion tied up with Microsoft and NVIDIA, another $50 billion with FluidStack.
And they're also using Elon Musk's SpaceX Colossus 1 supercomputer.
Right. Which requires 300 megawatts of dedicated power just to run its 220,000 GPUs.
They are essentially locking up hundreds of billions of dollars across the entire global energy and server grid, just to ensure they have the sheer computational power to train the next generation of models.
It's like, imagine a casino giving you $40 to play at their tables, but you have to sign an ironclad contract promising to spend $200 over the next 5 years just to keep your seat.
That's a perfect analogy. And analysts actually have a term for this circular economy. They call it vertical extraction.
Vertical extraction. How does that actually work in this Google deal?
Well, Google initially invested up to $40 billion into Anthropic, right?
Right.
And now Anthropic is committing $200 billion back to Google Cloud. So Google captures value at every single vertical layer.
So the money just walks across the street and right back into Google's pocket.
Exactly. Google owns the chips, the TPUs. They own the cloud infrastructure, GCP, and they hold the investor equity stake. It's literally a 5x return on investment before Anthropic even ships a new product.
That is insane. And that exact strategy is why Alphabet's market cap has just surged to $4.8 trillion.
Driven largely by that 63% growth in Google Cloud.
Yeah, they're closing right in on NVIDIA's $5.08 trillion. Google isn't just treating Anthropic as a customer, they are physically fusing Anthropic's future growth directly into their own balance sheet.
Right, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, Google's deal here is not an isolated incident. This circular structure is literally the foundation of the entire global tech economy right now.
Which,
Over $1 trillion in committed future spending from two companies that essentially just got here.
okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Wait a minute. The three biggest tech giants in the world are basing their revenue growth for the next half-decade on two startups continuing to scale at historic rates.
Yes.
Isn't that just an incredible house of cards?
It certainly looks like one. Aaron Rose actually makes a brilliant historical comparison here. He compares this to the 1860s railroad bond markets.
Oh, the railroad bubble.
Exactly. Back during westward expansion, these massive infrastructure companies took on just eye-watching amounts of debt to lay railroad tracks.
Right, and they justified it by assuming that just building the tracks would inevitably generate the traffic needed to pay off the debt.
Right. And structurally, they weren't entirely wrong. The expansion happened, the traffic materialized, but the timing was completely misaligned. They built the tracks much faster than the population demand could support, and it led to a spectacular bubble and an economic crash.
So applied to AI, the data centers, the GPUs, the power plants, those are the railroad tracks.
Exactly. And the math problem here is severe. Anthropic is currently at roughly a $30 billion run rate.
Meaning if they stay exactly where they are, they make $30 billion a year.
Right. But to make that $200 billion Google commitment make sense, they need to hit $100 billion or more in annual revenue.
They have to triple their business just to pay their server bills.
Yeah. If they hit $100 billion, the math is beautiful. But what if consumer demand plateaus? What if they only hit a $50 billion run rate?
Then they're chained to a commitment they can't afford, and the shockwave travels straight up to Google and Amazon.
Exactly.
Wow. Well, all this macro-level infrastructure warfare, it directly impacts the micro-level news and the tools you might actually use every day.
Right. It trickles down.
It does. So let's quickly run through the quick hits from the digest so you're fully up to date for May 7. First, Anthropic is finalizing a $900 billion valuation round.
Yeah, and they're on a trajectory for an October IPO, which they desperately need to fund these cloud commitments.
Oh, and their Claude code rate limits have been doubled.
Which is huge for developers. Also, Elon Musk's xAI has formally rebranded to SpaceXAI.
Which is driven by power needs, right?
Exactly. You can't just plug a massive supercomputer into a city grid. Space launch facilities have the heavy industrial power and cooling systems required. He's merging the compute infrastructure with his space power infrastructure.
Makes perfect sense.
Meanwhile, DeepSeek remains the absolute cost efficiency leader. They are down to $3.48 per million output tokens.
Applying massive downward pricing pressure on OpenAI and Anthropic right when they need revenue the most.
Exactly. And finally, a quick reminder for developers, GitHub Copilot's token-based billing starts June 1st.
So that's just 25 days away.
Yep. Microsoft is no longer eating the cost of heavy users. They are passing that raw infrastructure bill directly down to you.
The macro hitting the micro. Exactly. And that's really the core of this deep dive. When you're reading a headline about a new AI model or you're prepping for a tech meeting, you aren't just looking at software anymore.
No, not at all.
You are looking at a $2 trillion web of circular bets and boardroom survival tactics.
And I'll leave you with this thought experiment to ponder after we wrap up.
Yep.
We know the infrastructure build-out is real, right? The concrete is being poured.
Yeah.
And the demand right now is very real. But if these trillion-dollar circular economies are built entirely on the assumption of infinite exponential future revenue, what happens to the broader global economy if the AI demand train simply slows down to a normal speed before the tracks are finished?
It is a massive structural question, and we will be watching it closely. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning those headlines, and we will catch you next time.